Good day, everyone, everywhere, and special greetings to all those seated in heavenly places in Jesus, our Messiah. The name of this broadcast is Cross the Border, and this is a live prophecy reality edition. Yes, we come to the broadcast live once a week. The studio cam is on, and you can join the conversation, if any shows up, in the chat room at firstamendmentradio.net or .com. Go there, click on the chat room button, and actually you can watch the live studio cam. There's a small YouTube screen in the right-hand column. Also, there's a number at the top of that column for calling in, if you'd like to call in at any time during the broadcast. Your comments, questions are welcome. You can also try to Skype far live, although that's on another screen with another button. So I think I should hear a notice or something if it comes on. That's the problem with being your own producer. Things may work and they may not, but the phone will work. It will ring and I will answer it right here. Anyway, what are we going to talk about today? Let's see. This first segment, I've got several articles I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about a little bit about prophecy. This is prophecy reality, and we try to bring it to the reality of where we are in prophecy, and of course, using the historicist method, that is, prophecy is history in advance. Who could argue with that one, right? It's history in advance. And as it unfolds in history, we recognize it. And it's always been that way. Old Testament prophets gave a lot of prophecies, and some of them were fulfilled before Christ came, and some of them were fulfilled by the coming of Christ in events that came at that time and thereafter. And so the prophecy was given, the history was told in advance by the one who sees all history from all time before it happens. He created all things, so he created the history before it happened. So he gives us some clues. He verifies his word by telling us about things that will happen in the future. And so we have a record of prophecy fulfilled from the Old Testament, in the Old Testament, different books. There are 66 different books written successively throughout history. And the later books have a record of history fulfilled from earlier books, and so it is with the New Testament. But since 95 AD, thereabouts, when the last book of prophecy, the revelation of Jesus Christ, was penned by John, through the Holy Spirit, of course, we have got no more prophecy. And the book of Revelation contains an outline of history from the time it was written, the things which must shortly come to pass as to their commencement, and fill up the rest of history until Christ comes. And then, of course, we see in chapter 19, we read about his coming and things that will transpire upon his return and shortly before his return even. And then in chapter 20, we find out what happens when he returns. There will be a millennial reign of Christ. And then it goes on into the future. What happens after the 1,000 years is up? We have a new heaven and a new earth after the final judgment. And then we go into the eternal state. And that's pretty much a roundup of the book of Revelation, if you want to encapsulate it, and so that you can understand it easily. That's what's going on. But where we are in that history, well, we're toward the end of it. We're coming up to the end of the 6th millennia and the beginning of the 7th or Sabbath millennia, the millennial reign of Christ. And we have a few years left, and I would approximate we have about 35 years left till the end of the 6th millennium. If you're interested in it, you can go to my website, and if you go to crosstheborder.org, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner of the homepage on the website, there's a link to What Year Is It? And you should check that out, and you'll find that in the pages of the Bible, there's a chronology that you can follow up to the Roman calendar, and then from the Roman calendar to today. Hope you'll find that very interesting and very convincing. And I expect there are plenty of challenges in the comments there and plenty of help. I can't say I did that work all by myself. I may have initiated it and instigated it, but my listeners and the readers of my blog there at crosstheborder.org or nicholasarthur.wordpress.com helped me with that. We refined it over a number of years until it was pretty much settled about 2013, I think. So, and I haven't been able to refine it any since then, and neither do I want to, because I'm not looking for the exact day and hour of his return, not the week, not the day, not the hour, not even the month. I think if I got the right year, or if I got close to the right year, give or take a year, I think I'm doing well enough, and that's good enough for me. And I can't be like some of these prophets of the past that many people have divined the rapture over the last so many years, and they got it down to the day. But of course they were wrong. And of course then there were 88 reasons why the rapture must happen in 1988, for all of you that have been around for a while. I have that book in my library. It's a little pamphlet. I kept it as a souvenir. Very exciting at the time, especially for all of us rapturists. Dispensational eschatology was taught to me in my church, and of course I bought into it. Yeah, that was in 1988. And then in 1988 missed, so they came out with a follow-up, Why It Must Happen, 89 Reasons. Another, you know what the 89th reason why it must happen in 1989 was? It's because it didn't happen in 1988, see? Yeah, I think that might be a joke, but it's a pretty serious joke if you ask me. Oh, let me check the chat room, see if we got any comers here, any takers of the show. Well, Patrick's in the chat room, and my nearly 1,000 people that I've notified the program is starting this morning are all sleeping in. I don't know. Yes, it's funny to have that many followers and people that you can notify, and I was a little late getting out the notice, but well, okay. If I was going for popularity, I'd be a rapturist or something else. Anyway, good to see you there, Patrick, and far out in the studio, of course, is me. I'm in the studio. I hope everybody likes my brick wall here behind me. I had the Masons come in during the last show. That's a joke, too. Tom Fress was doing a show on masonry. Yeah, actually. So, okay, hey, let's get to our articles here. And speaking of prophecy reality, of course, if you followed me, you know my stand, the historicist stand. And we can go back to Daniel chapter 2 and Nebuchadnezzar's image. I call it the Mystery Babylon image because that's what it is, the Mystery Babylon image. And, of course, the Mystery Babylon image, it tells us about the major powers, the beast powers, that rule the world until Christ returns. And of course that sixth power that was present with John when he wrote the Revelation was Rome. And then that was Rome pagan, which lasted up till about 300-400 AD thereabouts, when Constantine rose up and he embraced Christianity and made it the official religion of the Roman Empire. And of course we know that Rome fell to the barbarian hordes, those 10 kingdoms or 10 barbarian kingdoms that came down and conquered Rome and divided it into 10. So you got these 10 horns on the Roman beast. And immediately the Daniel's little horn rises up and he subdues the three nearest horn powers to him because, the Antichrist, he can't have people too infringing on close on his territory. So he subdued three of those horns, and then he ruled the Roman Empire for 1260 years, and you had the Holy Roman Empire under the head, the papacy, the little horn of Daniel. And since then, since the beast was punished under the papal head and suffered punishment since about the turn of the century, that is the turn of the 19th or the 18th, going into the 19th century, early 1800s, late 1700s, you have the breaking up of the Holy Roman Empire. And you'll notice, you go back to Daniel's image, and you'll notice that the clay portion, or the iron portion, is mingled with clay. And it's broken into pieces. This is the effect of the kingdom of God on the Roman beast over so many years, is the continual breaking of the Roman power. It's a breakup of the concentration of power. That concentration of power that Rome and the Vatican and the papacy wielded over the 10-horned beast for 1260 years was very hard fought for Rome, especially during the end. Very hard fought after the Reformation and the infant church gained the ascendancy. And they could not keep it from breaking up. It cost them a lot to fight against it. But that wound has been healed as prophesied. And although the mode of operation for the Antichrist beast power and the little horn power is a little bit different than it was during the 1260-year overt reign, the scripture shows us that during the end that there are three players on the scene that come alongside that beast power and the little horn and help it out. And that is the two-horned earth beast that rises up in the wilderness or out of the earth or the unpopulated area, which we've identified as America. And it's two horns. One is lamb-like, the other speaks as a dragon. So we have this duality, this kind of equal war going on here, and it's very evident today. It's more pronounced than ever it was in my lifetime, and perhaps more pronounced than it has been in 100 years, or definitely since the Civil War. The pronounced division between the lamb-like and the dragon-speaking qualities of this earth beast are so evident today. And people wonder, and they talk about civil war now and things like that. And it's easy to see. And that's really the difference. Where it was under the surface before, it is now on the surface and bubbling very rapidly. And that's what we notice today. But I see no indication from prophecy that one horn of this two-horned earth beast is going to rise higher than the other. They seem to be at the same level throughout, so we can pretty much expect the status quo to the end, even though it be more pronounced at this time. And so that's what we have here. We have this breaking, as hard as the Antichrist tries to consolidate power, we have the opposite force continuing to keep it broken up. And see, Patrick says, yet there is much resistance to the U.S. represented in Revelation. I think that's kind of what I'm talking about. Yeah, and there's much resistance. Anyway, let's go on to some of our news items here. And let's see, I have this from LouRockwell.com, and you should subscribe. Great articles over there at LouRockwell.com for all of us iconoclasts out here. This article is called Bootleggers and Catholics, the Politics of Open Borders Lobby. Economist Bruce Yandel is known for, among other things, authoring the Bootleggers and Baptist theory of government regulation. The gist of the theory is that many forms of regulation and other types of government intervention persist because of the political clout of one group, the bootleggers, that is only interested in money, and another group, the Baptists, that has some religious or ideological interest in a particular form of government intervention. The bootlegger and Baptist prohibition, where bootleggers supported it because it made the competition, legal alcohol merchants, illegal, whereas Baptist is symbolic language for those who supported prohibition for religious reasons. But this article is Bootleggers and Catholics, so pay attention. In her new book, Open Borders, Inc., Michelle Malkin documents chapter and verse what has to be one of the biggest bootleggers and Baptist operations ever. The coalition of large corporations like Koch Industries, Apple Computer, along with arms of the Catholic Church that seeks to abolish national sovereignty. See, this is an antichrist project to abolish the national sovereignty of the United States with open borders. The corporate interest is mainly in cheap labor, says Malkin, whereas the rhetoric of the Catholic Church is about compassion for refugees. There's a twist here in Professor Yaddel's theory, however, a twist that probably also exists in many of his other examples. The twist is that although the rhetoric of the Catholic Church is about compassion for the poor, it is not just coincidental that it rakes in hundreds of millions of dollars a year in government grants to administer its refugee settlement and other illegal immigrant programs. And this is because, of course, we know that the Antichrist shadow government is firmly implanted in Washington, D.C., and throughout the governments, and yes, even in the churches of America. The Antichrist and his shadow government, this is the healed head wound at work. That head, which received a wound as it were to death, is completely healed, though it doesn't operate openly and overtly in the same manner that it did during its 1260-year Holy Roman Empire reign. It reigns nonetheless, through its shadow government and operatives worldwide, everywhere, and even in America. And here's a great thing about prophecy and America, is that it is shown that the dragon side, the dragon horn, never rises up higher than or subdues the lamb-like qualities of the two-horned earth beast. So at least we have an even fighting chance here. And going through history, and I hope everybody's going through history through with me for the remainder of the week. And we're going to finish. We're going to do the entire history of the church and history of Protestantism from James A. Wiley. And it's going to take hundreds of segments to do this series, but I hope you're following along and you can see what happens when the dragon power gets higher than liberty and freedom, the lamb-like power in any land. It doesn't mean that we don't have to fight. We still have to fight. And that's another thing you learn from history, that you have to continually fight. You have to continually be vigilant for your liberty and your freedom, your religious liberty and your religious freedom, as well as your civil liberties and freedoms. And those are slipping away, and I don't know how far they'll slip away, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to stand on liberty as long as I can. Many people don't. Many people have opted to volunteer for slavery, and I would say most unwittingly. And even, going through history, I see that many great men of God unwittingly volunteered for some aspects of slavery. But that didn't cost them their salvation. Those were the times they lived in. And and they fought a good fight that God gave them to fight. So, thankfully we're not judged by works, but God judges the thoughts and intents of the heart. And basically, and thank God especially for the blood of Jesus, because it's not our works that we're saved by. We only work because we are saved, because we love him. We offer our lives to him as a living sacrifice for his kingdom and for his purpose in the earth and wherever we're living at the time. Whatever we can do for his kingdom, that's what we need to be doing. Anyway, continuing with the article here. The twist is that although the rhetoric of the Catholic Church is about compassion for the poor, it is not just coincidental that it makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year in government grants to administer its refugee resettlement and other illegal immigrant programs. The church also, what a gig, man, for their, let's see. For their purposes, they get the government to pay. Yeah, that's. I don't get that. The government is not going to pay me anything. But see, that's what you call fascism, and the Catholic Church loves fascism. They love the loss of liberties. The Church also views mass immigration from largely Catholic Latin America as a solution to the catastrophic drop-off in Sunday offerings. It lost some 3 million American Catholics between 2007 and 2015 in light of how it has handled its pedophile scandal. Follow the money is the main theme of Open Borders, Inc. Malkin, a lifelong Catholic, excoriates socialist Pope Francis for his rank hypocrisy in pontificating about the need for open borders in America while being surrounded himself by the gigantic and impenetrable Vatican Wall. The Vatican is the mother of all exclusive gated communities with fortifications and phalanxes around its 109 acres that make Beverly Hills look like Appalachia. Keeping watch at the entrances of the Vatican City are members of the Pontifical Swiss Guard, the 140-man standing army that is staffed by highly trained marksmen. They accompany the Holy Father in all his travels, packing the same personal defense weapons that fire army-piercing small caliber rifle rounds used by SEAL Team 6. Vatican City has its own separate police force which performs border control, armed with a full range of modern weaponry, including Glock pistols and Heckler & Koch and Beretta submachine guns, plus Carbon 15 machine pistols and Heckler & Koch Fab-Arm shotguns. Oh, it looks like we're coming into a break here. We're going to continue this article when we get back from the break. You're listening to Across the Border. I'm Nicholas Arthur. We'll be back in a few minutes. Don't go anywhere.
Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust, I will not be afraid. Behold, God is my strength.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on satellite, internet, or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back. You're listening to Cross the Border. It's another Prophecy Reality Edition. Shout out to all those few people that have showed up in the chat room. Okay, and we're talking about bootleggers and Catholics, an article that is posted at LouRockwell.com. There's nothing wrong with showing compassion to immigrants, writes Malkin, but what the Catholic Church is involved in is supporting the systematic undermining of an orderly immigration and entrance system that imposes limits, eligibility requirements, criminal background checks, medical screening, and a commitment to assimilation. Government showers taxpayer dollars on the Catholic Church's myriad open borders bureaucracies, bringing not a peep of protest from the usual leftist hysterics demanding a wall of separation between church and state. One program alone for migration and refugee services and run by the Catholic bishops gets 59% of its revenue from government grants. It collected $534 million in taxpayer dollars from 2008 to 2017. writes Malkin. Although it's a nonprofit 501c3 organization, it spends much of its time hurling insults at any and all elected officials who seek to enforce federal immigration laws. The open borders business of the Catholic Church, says Malkin, is about cold, hard cash. And I wish it was that simple, but it's not. It's not simply about cold, hard cash, although cold, hard cash is what motivates many of the people involved. But for the Antichrist and his shadow government, it's about Catholicizing America. And what are we supposed to do, us few Protestants out here? What are we supposed to do about it? Well, I'll tell you what, the only thing we can do about it, one, you can do whatever civil protesting and voting and making all the stands against that. But at the same time, when you meet up with these immigrants that come to our country, we preach the gospel to them. Yeah, if we can, why not? And you'll see from the next article that it looks like I'm going to have to cover in the next hour. We have some things to say about American Catholics. And I don't think the Pope is very happy with them. But anyway, you'll see, because I'm going to read a Catholic, well, this girl, Michelle Malkin, this lady here that's writing the article we're commenting on, she's a Catholic too. Yeah, these are rebellious Catholics, so the Pope would definitely think. And going through like the history of Bohemia, what a history, the Huss and Jerome in Bohemia started a whole thing, and they were martyred, and that pretty much. But anyway, in the end, you have the Catholics joining up with the Protestants to fight the Pope and the hordes he's bringing against their country, because that's what they should do. I mean, their land is being invaded, but in the end, that's how it turned out. And it's a good history. So, and you can listen to that history. I'm going through it the rest of the week during my Cross the Border broadcasts. So very interesting history, and I hope that everyone's following that. Okay, Malkin writes of how Barack Obama got his start in politics after leaving Harvard Law School. Of course, he got an alien degree or something, or that only aliens could. Non-American citizens could apply for. Anyway, we won't go there. That's all been hashed out in history for all the good it's done us. And I could make more comments about that. He worked for the disgraced and now defunct ACORN, Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now. ACORN was big league spouter Marxist rhetoric to justify its actions, which is probably what attracted Obama to it. It specialized in things as threatening to cry racism unless banks gave it, ACORN, and not any alleged victims of racism, millions or tens of millions of dollars. It did so by making use of the Carter-era Community Reinvestment Act, which gave community organizations the ability to protest to the Fed and endlessly delay a proposed bank merger or new branch opening unless the bank could prove that it was not practicing or lending discrimination. Typically, the complaint would be withdrawn as soon as ACORN got the cash. So here's more shadow government operations for the Antichrist going on in our midst. Regardless whether ACORN got the cash, regardless of whether any study of discrimination was completed. As soon as they got the cash, the complaint was withdrawn and they got their license to open a bank or whatever. It was essentially an extortion racket that raked in billions over the years. Malkin quotes Obama as explaining how he worked hand in hand with the Catholic Campaign for Human Development while with ACORN. And I remember when, Obama published his tax returns. You could see that the only charity he gave to was, wait for it, of course, Catholic Charities. It's all public. You can look it up yourself even now. I'm sure there's still pictures of his tax returns out there on the web that you can actually look at and see where he gave his money. The campaign gave Acorn $7.3 million before it was forced out of business after a prostitution smuggling ring it was apparently running was exposed on video by Project Veritas. Yes, Project Veritas. That were good people over there. So Catholic Charities is the big kahuna of government-funded open borders activism, receiving 98% of its budget in 2012 from government grants. 98%! You know how much of my budget I get from government grants? A minus. Minus percent. Because I have to pay property taxes. So, and I get absolutely nothing from the government. Yes, for the past several decades, it has received on average about 60% of its revenue from government grants, with an annual budget over $100 billion, over $1 billion. Sorry, not $100 billion, $1 billion. 57 government agencies fund Catholic charities, Malkin reports. Boy, when you can spread it out that far and wide, nobody gets a bullseye painted on them. See, that's how a shadow government should be operated, that nobody can put a bullseye on anything. You got it spread over 57 government agencies funding Catholic charities. Man, I'll tell you what, that shadow government for the Antichrist, there's a lot to be admired there in the way that they accomplish things and get things done. Yes, they put us to shame. That's why Jesus said, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But see, they do a lot of harm, don't they? And that's what limits us. If we can do anything, as be wise as serpents, but the credo is do no harm. And if we have to do harm, that's where we have to stop. That's our Christian credo, going off of that maxim from Jesus there, to be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves. Okay, continuing with the article here. Malkin includes a chapter on the left's hate machine, the Southern Poverty Law Center, which does nothing for poverty and practices almost no law. The role of the SPLC in all of this, as with all other issues, is to smear any and all dissenters to its radical Bolshevik-style leftism as haters and extremists. When the American Enterprise Institute sponsored a debate by two academics on the issue of immigration, for example, the SPLC condemned the institution for mainstreaming hate, arguing for enforcement of immigration laws that Congress has passed and presidents have signed is apparently the same as being a member of the KKK and burning a cross in the front yard of a black family, according to the SPLC. Or they would like what one commentator calls the low information voters of America to believe. Malkin documents many examples of this guilt by association smear. For example, they will find some genuinely crazy sounding misfit who no one ever heard of, who rants and raves on the internet. He will then be placed in their official list of immigrant haters and extremists, along with, say, Senator Ted Cruz, Lou Dobbs, Michelle Malcolm, implying that they are all birds of the feather and equally threatening to society. Looming over all this is George Soros, who doesn't really fit in with the Bootleggers and Baptist theme, despite being a wealthy businessman. Malkin documents the millions of dollars he spends annually on facilitating illegal immigration around the world, while at the same time quoting Soros' utopian rhetoric about his dream of world government, presumably run by himself and his ideological cronies. In other words, Soros is more like one of the Dr. Evil characters plotting world dominion on domination in a James Bond movie. And so there you have it. That's how the Antichrist works. And how many people are unwittingly, it's like they'll look at him, that'll be our next article that I want to jump into. Anyway, let me check the chat room, see if we have any comments, questions. Right now would be a great time if anyone wants to call in. See, Arab Spring. I don't know anything about Arab Spring. Someone put that in the chat room. It's a question mark. And yeah, well, it's just the Antichrist at work in other countries, and the whole Arab or Islamic invasion of Western Europe. That's all the Antichrist doing. Anything to dilute, I mean, Islam is a weapon of the Vatican. Islam was created by the Vatican. It was nurtured by the Vatican, brought to power by the Vatican as a useful tool. And, that it's grown into, kind of out of control doesn't really matter, because anything but Bible-believing Protestantism, that's what they hate. That's what the Counter-Reformation is all about. Anything to put it down, because it is the only thing. The Word of God is the thing they hate. And so anything but that, the dilution of the morals of any society, anything that will lead to its downfall, and so that it'll fall into the hands of the Antichrist. That's what he's after. That's what history shows. That's why history is so important, and why I've decided to spend so much time on history during my broadcasts now. And so we're going to continue that until we get through at least James A. Wiley's History of Protestantism. And we're barely through it. Believe me, we're like only not even halfway through the first volume. Let's see, wonderful humor today, though it isn't a laughing matter. Well, I always like to keep things light. Okay, what else do we got going on here? Not a whole lot of participation here in the chat room. I was hoping to have Patrick on one of these days for a segment at least. He wrote a great article. I have it here somewhere. Here it is. It was Jesuit research article. That was pretty good. I enjoyed that. I read every word of it. I read a lot. Believe me. I spend probably half of my waking hours reading and writing. I had to admit both there. So, but it's something that is that keeps you alive. It keeps your mind vibrant and alive. So everyone should be picking up books and reading. And I've got a great selection at firstamendmentradio.com and crosstheborder.org. So you should pick up some of those there. And there's a lot of free books. You can go to my Bible studies page. Everyone should read for their own information. F. Tupper Saucy's Rulers of Evil. Definitely a very suppressed book by the shadow government. Doesn't like anything that exposes them to the light of day. Everything. Anyway, looks like I'm going to have to wrap up this hour, and next hour I'm going to jump into this other article. Might as well do the whole broadcast live today and save the history for the rest of the week, since that's the way it's turning out. Okay, go to my website. He says I know you. You're already hooked up. He says I was able to hear you on both. Can I try back? Yeah, you can try back on either one right now, this minute. Except we have 2 minutes left, so you might want to come in early or after the news for the next hour. That would be fine. That would be great. And I could hook you up, but I couldn't talk to you. You would just hear what's on the air, because that's all you're hearing is what's on the air. But once you join me on the air, you hear me and we can talk. So that's the way it works. Unless you call on the phone, then I can talk to you during off air. Okay, anyway, go to crosstheborder.org or nicholasarthur.wordpress.com. Make sure you subscribe to my blog there. That way I can notify you of any broadcasts or new postings that I post on my blog. I'd appreciate that. And if you're giving your money to, what's his name? Any of those other apostate ministries out there, please stop and consider supporting firstamendmentradio.net or .com. We really do need your money. If you want to give a substantial amount every month, we would prefer to receive that by check rather than continuing to enrich PayPal. Plus that when PayPal cuts us off, because that'll probably happen one day, we'll get deplatformed by PayPal, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Eventually it's going to happen because, that's the way it works. But until then, we'll keep using those platforms. We'll use every platform we can. But I guess they could even shut down our bank account. Yeah. And so we couldn't even receive checks. Then people would have to send us silver and gold. Anyway, you get the idea. We need your support by whatever means you can get it to us, because we are very poor when it comes to cash and money. We certainly don't have what many other ministries and other alternative media have out there selling products. Where's my product selling staff? I say I'd have to do that too if I was going to sell products, and I certainly have just barely enough time with the help of my daughter, my limited staff, to do the things that I'm doing here already. But we do need to eat, pay the bills, and it would be nice if we had money to actually expand and add other people here to help out in the ministry. Very much needed. So invest your kingdom dollars here, and you will reap your reward in eternity in the kingdom of God. So that's all I can say about that. And I'll leave that up to between you and the Almighty. Yeah. Okay, anything else? I think I'm about time here. And yeah, I don't want to start anything else. Let's see, what else we got going on here. Check out the posts on my website, share them on your social media. Make sure you put our Prophecy Reality News app on your smartphone, and if you have the iPhone, you can go to firstamendmentradio.net and click on the, what is that page? I got to look at that to even remember how it works. Yes, you go to First Amendment Radio, and that's not it. Oh, there it is. That's the button. And you press on the mobile page there, and then you'll get our mobile page, and then save that, save a link to it on your surface of your smartphone or whatever, your iPad or whatever. That way you always have a click link to our mobile page, because we don't have an Apple app anymore, because Apple decided that they would charge us $100 a year to have a web page available on their devices. But you can do it that way. You can go to our mobile page and put a link on your Surface. Okay, we'll come back after the news. We'll see you then.